Including the full shares.
I think that the owl is actually picking up our.
I'd like to welcome everyone to our hybrid meeting of the American Entomological Society. This is our October meeting. And we have a wonderful speaker today. My name is Sven Sternad. I'm actually the vice president of the society. The president, Greg Copper, usually does the introduction. So this is my first time, so bear with me. I have my 3x5 index cards that they taught me back in college way long ago. And I've numbered them, so if I drop them, we're all set. So this is the American Entomological Society, live here from the Academy of Natural Sciences in Philadelphia. And the beauty of having a live speaker here where you can come to meet him is you can come to meet him or her and ask him questions or her questions afterwards. And there are also usually a number of experts in the audience who have a wealth of information that they can share with you. It's really quite inspirational. If you ever want to bring a child here to get to meet some real experts, it's a wonderful opportunity. Our goal is actually to keep people connected or reconnect them with entomology. And the goal of the American Entomological Society is to, I'm watching Ashley here.
Yeah, you're fine.
I'm
Keep
fine.
talking. I'm just gonna listen to them.
Okay, sure. Technology is a wonderful thing. Okay, so if you actually go to our website, and once again, it's the American Entomological Society, not to be confused with the Entomological Society of America. If you try to log on to AES, you may get diverted to ESA, but bear with us. So one of the missions of the group is to support entomological research, education, and outreach. We're here for the people who want to come to you. If you want to come to us, we're here for you. One of our goals next year is to find ways to bring more entomology into classrooms. And we're looking for ways to do that. It's a difficult environment now because of standardized testing, which often limits or restricts what teachers can teach in schools. But there are a number of ways of incorporating entomology into those same programs from a literature standpoint, from a science standpoint, from a math standpoint. You can work insects into every curriculum if you're so interested. Also, one of the beauty of insects is there are often students who are hands-on students and may not be the best at academics. And if you give them an opportunity to work with insects, they're more interested in being in school. And that can be very important. If they have a few minutes where they can be successful, whereas they may not be successful in other areas, it's a truly wonderful thing. So society does support outreach programs. They donated some money this year to the Bug Fest, which was apparently quite successful. We also give an award to a science student or a person who shows interest in entomology related research or a project. We go to the Delaware Valley Science Fair and we meet with students there. You do not have to be a student. If you know of a student who has an interest in entomology, it doesn't have to be with the Delaware Valley Science Fair. Let us know at the society what that person has done. We will review their work and see if they are eligible for the awards that we give. So we're trying to outreach to the community. We're here. You can go to our website and contact us and let us know what's going on with them. Okay. The society has two publications published on a regular basis: the Transactions of the AES and also Entomological News. Members who join our society have access to those journals and they can read those articles. We actually have a new article today for this month. I want to ask Ashley to come up and actually read the title that she's been given quite an honor. You just, as an entomologist, you never know what your honor will be. Here's the title of the article.
So it's a new Delphacid planehopper, Hemiptera fulguromorpha delphacidae, from Costa Rica with an updated species list.
And the name of that?
The name of the new genus and species of Delphacid that was described as Athena delphax kennedyae.
And Ashley's last name is Kennedy, it was named after her.
It was described by our colleague and the recording secretary for the AES, Charles Bartlett, who's a professor at the University of Delaware. This is a great honor. I'm very touched.
So she will live, her name will live forever. And is it, what are the described species real quick?
Yes, so
For
it's
those who don't know it.
Delphacid plant hoppers. They have piercing, sucking mouthparts since they are in the true bug order. They have let me think. I'm like, I did my master's on them, but I'm like, how do I go back to the basics and describe them? So, you know, they are plant feeders. They're important as vectors of plant viruses. They look like little aliens when you get them under the microscope because they have these cute little short antennae and you know, big compound eyes.
Not unlike Ashley's right now.
Yeah, I got into the Halloween spirit a little early, decided to come as a fly. I figured we might learn a little bit about flies tonight, so it would be topical. But yeah, so I actually had collected this new species without realizing it was a new species when I went to Costa Rica in 2011 when I was a master's student working for Charles Bartlett. So this is really exciting for me. It says this new species is the 35th genus and the 62nd species of Delphacid recorded from Costa Rica. But they suspect that the true Delphacid biodiversity for Costa Rica may be around 150 species. So there's still more out there to find.
So there's a lot to contribute as a professional entomologist, and also as an amateur or just an enthusiast in general. What we usually do after briefly speaking about the society is go into current news or new insect, anything new about insects that's in the press. And I'm going to start this off with an article that was in BBC. Mosquitoes have been found in Iceland for the first time after the country experienced record-breaking heat this spring. Insect enthusiast Bjorn Hjaltason encountered the mosquitoes after several nights last week while using wine-soaked ropes to observe moths, local media reported. Mr. Hjaltason found 2 female mosquitoes and 1 male, which were later confirmed to be Velocity annulata, one of the few species that can successfully survive winter. Iceland was one of only 2 mosquito-free havens in the world prior to the discovery, partly due to its cold climate. The other recorded mosquito-free zone is Antarctica. So there are new things happening. We don't quite know why he had wine-soaked cloths with him. I assume he was trying to collect insects, but maybe he was just out partying for whatever purpose. But once again, you don't have to be a professional entomologist to make a contribution. And in today's changing world, environmentally, and also the changing world and the support that science is getting, anything that people in general can do to contribute to the science is quite valuable. Citizen scientists, perhaps the up-and-coming thing. But I'm now going to introduce Ashley. Oh, I'm sorry. Does anybody in the audience have something like to contribute to news, insect-wise? After that? Oh. We've had Ashley's news about her honor, and then this news about Iceland. So here's Ashley, and she's going to introduce our speaker.
And just a little bit of like our usual housekeeping is while our guest speaker is on, please keep your microphone muted if you're joining us on Zoom. But if you have questions as we go along, feel free to type them into the chat and we'll just do them all at the end. We'll do a little Q&A session when this PowerPoint is done. And another thing I like to ask our Zoom attendees to do, this is just for fun, to see how far our geographic reach is in this, virtual age. If you don't mind sharing in the chat where you're tuning in from, it's just kind of fun to see, how many people are joining us from different states, sometimes other countries. So that can be kind of cool. But yeah, let's go ahead and just jump right in. James Butler is a specialist in entomological training, pest management program reviews, and vector-borne disease consultation across the Eastern United States. He also contributes to interagency working groups and serves on the Operations Committee of the Armed Forces Pest Management Board. Expanding his commitment to public health and entomology, Mr. Butler developed and instructs a novel pest management workforce development course at Cecil College. So thank you so much for joining us. James, you can take it away. Yeah, name a couple more people. I think I kind of figured out how to do this. Sorry about that.
Yes. All right, well, I didn't know. Good evening, everybody, both in person and online. As Ashley said, my name is James Butler. I'm a civilian with the military, with the Army, so not a green suiter, not a soldier, but I do formally work for the federal government. And under the current climate right now, I'm furloughed, so I am today not formally speaking on behalf of the government. There we go. This is something new that I'm doing with my presentations. I oftentimes get asked, can I get a copy of the presentation? So I came up with a QR code. If anybody wants to take a picture of this using their smartphone, you can download either a PDF or the PowerPoint file itself. I'll give a minute or two for anybody that wants to do that. And while I'm doing that, as a federal employee, I always have to give a disclaimer. This is my views, my input. I'm not speaking for the federal government. Even if I was not furloughed right now and here solely on my behalf, I still have to give this kind of disclaimer. So. Now, for those here in the audience, can anybody give me an idea of why Abraham Lincoln might have an association with insects? I do like to get engagement, if possible, but
And termites in the log cabin.
no, actually, bioterrorism. So during the Civil War era, there were some Confederate sympathizers who were down in Bermuda. They were working with yellow fever. And for whatever reason, they wanted to disrupt the Union Army and just the general population for the Union. And what they decided to do was to take bedding, clothing, other textiles that was, quote, contaminated with yellow fever and ship them up to the United States. They shipped them to various Army installations, very prominent people, and in particular, they wanted to ship them to our president at the time, Abraham Lincoln. Now, entomologists all here, do you think that they could get yellow fever in that way?
No.
Yeah. But at that time, we did not know the association of mosquitoes and yellow fever. They thought that it was contaminated clothing would be able to transmit that and disrupt the Union. A little backstory on it. One of the people that was involved actually decided he did not want to participate in this, and he kind of became a whistleblower. And so even if yellow fever could have been transmitted that way, it was kind of shut down. Like, I don't think the clothing or anything actually made it to Lincoln or the White House. That's an interesting story, entomology related, kind of military-ish. Thought I would start off with that. Now, what I want to talk about today is kind of a story, if you will. I'm going to start with entomological threats throughout history. in terms of military. So how have insects impacted military operations? And I'm gonna kind of skim really quickly through to more modern times, more American times. And then I'm gonna get into what is military entomology, in particular with the United States. Then narrow it down to the Army entomology, pest management realm, kind of how that is handled, how pest management is handled within the Army in particular. Then get into kind of my realm, what I do, what my association is, what we do as a unit. And then I'll kind of end up with a couple of cool examples of some of the missions that we've done. So first off, military. Most people think of war and it's fighting and shooting guns and stabbing. Most injuries throughout history associated with war were actually not due to the physical fighting itself. They were due to what we call within the military realm, disease and non-battle injuries, DNBI. To give a little bit of context to this, I've got some of the events, wars, or other military actions within the United States, and you can kind of see here numbers. So top one, Civil War, only looking at the Union because that's who won, and that's kind of how history is usually written, to the victor. Number of people that served within the Union, how many battle injuries there were. So how many people actually were injured due to the fighting, and then look how many were due to non-battle injuries. 138,000 battle injuries, 221,000 non-battle injuries. And then you can see here some of the arthropod-borne diseases, yellow fever, typhoid, malaria. I'm not gonna go through this whole thing, but you can kind of get a feel for how many injuries, how many casualties were impacted from the fighting versus everything else that could be associated, whether it's entomological risks or cold, sanitation, food issues. And you look at these, you get down to more modern times, and it kind of flips. You look at like in Vietnam, most of those injuries were battle injuries because we have gotten a better handle on not letting insects affect us. Napoleon. Who knows who Napoleon is? Very famous military strategist. He had significant issues associated with insects that took out some of his armies. In Egypt, he dealt a lot with mosquito diseases. In the war with Russia, he actually lost from 600,000 soldiers. He lost 500,000 of those, and most of that was towards things like typhus. Of course, there was cold, there was food issues, but you had a major impact. Before he ever even got to Russia, his army was more or less decimated. How about the Civil War? We're going to jump ahead. We're going to skip the American Revolution, jump into the Civil War. Now, you know much about Civil War, you know it was a very bloody, very dirty war. Lots of casualties. So much so that this picture that I have here, I thought it was really interesting. This was an ambulance train at the hospital outside of Gettysburg before the war happened. Both sides just expected so many casualties that they really had to put a ton of effort into the medical side of it. You know, how many people are going to get injured? They're going to be amputee, things like that. Now, with it being such a bloody war, so many injuries, but also very dirty situations. This picture is actually a field hospital. These are injured patient soldiers lined up outside, not in tents. They're being exposed to flies, all kinds of insects. So even if they have a wound, even if it was a clean cut, it could become infected with something. It got so bad, they were even doing surgery outside. So amputees or whatever other surgical things. The surgeons were outside in open air doing this stuff. Just think of how many people probably lost a limb, maybe lost a life, just due to the conditions that the medical team was working with. And it got so bad, sanitation was horrible. That not only for the medical side of things, injuries, just living conditions, dysentery, things like that, that were being transmitted by flies, which is heavily impacting both sides. So much so that for the Union, there was actually the United States Sanitary Commission was established. It was an independent organization, primarily wealthy individuals in the Union that came together to try to reduce a lot of this poor sanitation or conditions that was impacting the Army. And it was a lot of elite members of society, and then they would maybe go and help and try to get things a bit cleaner to try to help those soldiers. Another thing with the Civil War is malaria prophylaxis. So quinine, that was being provided to a lot of the soldiers. However, at this time, there was not a connection between mosquitoes and malaria, yellow fever. They hadn't made that connection. Not until this individual. Anybody know who this is? Walter Reed, kind of the father of military entomology. He determined right around 1900 that mosquitoes actually transmitted yellow fever. So we go back to that original story with Abraham Lincoln. Would that bioterrorism act actually have done anything, even if the whistleblower hadn't shut it down? Because it's insects that transmits it. But Walter Reed, he figured out that certain mosquitoes could transmit yellow fever. Other individuals kind of did a similar situation with like malaria. We started to understand disease transmission better. And then World War I broke out. World War I, maybe not quite as dirty of a war as our Civil War was, unless you were in the trenches. This was a really bad area. Lots of typhus, lots of mosquito diseases, very poor sanitary conditions. I mean, look at the individuals in this picture. You know, they're living day in and day out in these environments, and you get situations where body lice. So they would come out, you know, or maybe before they went into the trenches, getting deloused. And back then, it was a lot more cumbersome for them to delouse. It was more mechanical removal than any kind of chemical control. There also were things like lots of rats. You know, what do rats carry? Well, plague, you know, the fleas that bites the rats and that whole association. But they were so bad, this was competitions of how many rats could these people catch in those trenches. So just think of all those bad pathogens being associated with the military and how much that is impacting the soldiers' ability to do their job. They also, malaria prophylaxis, at this point, they understood malaria in mosquitoes. That mosquitoes transmitted malaria. So not only did we have high use of prophylaxis, but we started to get into chemical control for those mosquitoes. Now that we know this association of what's causing malaria, yellow fever and such, oh, that's those little bugs that fly around and bite you that we just thought were nuisance bites. Oh no, they actually can transmit diseases. So really we need to do something. Well, back then, didn't have a whole lot of good chemicals for use. Oils, there were things like putting kerosene in the water, Paris green, some very harsh pesticide chemical use. So even though they were kind of controlling mosquitoes to an extent, we were also doing a lot of environmental damage with that. So what happened between World War I and World War II in terms of entomology and pest management? Chemistry, we got really into developing new pesticides. What's the big pesticide that everybody did back in the day? DDT. DDT was heavily used, worked really well until we kind of found out some of the bad effects. Other things, fumigations. So we started getting more, what they call it, better life through chemistry. Getting fumigations so we can get rid of a lot of the pests within a area at a much higher scale, much faster control. DDT, talked about that. This is two examples of DDT being used for delousing. So pumping the powdered form of DDT into your uniforms. And this is both Army on the left, and I believe it was a British soldier treating a survivor from concentration camp using DDT. In the Pacific theater, we also dealt a lot with things like scrub typhus, a lot of malarial situations. So in atabrine was a substitute for quinine or malaria prophylaxis. So we're starting to get a lot more use of things to kind of help keep those, what was the term? DNBI, trying to keep that down so that those war fighters were actually capable, competent, and healthy to do what they needed to do. Innovative technology, bed nets for mosquito control, or not control, but personal protection, keeping those mosquitoes from being able to bite. Those were starting to be used during World War II. And we started to actually have teams of people going out to do surveys for mosquitoes and try to reduce those populations. We know that they're the disease carriers. Here's an example of a malaria survey in New Guinea. This team went out and they probably weren't doing so much surveillance as treating. At that point, it was more of a spray and pray kind of situation back then, but it's a start. We're going to skip Korea and go on up to the Vietnam era. And this is where military in the United States really starts to hone in on what we call preventive medicine. So doing things, environmental cues, things to help keep soldiers healthy instead of dealing with the after effect of somebody being bitten by a mosquito or what have you. So there were what we call preventive medicine units, medical detachments, small teams that were deployed, and their sole role was to do things to keep the warfighter soldiers safe. So malaria, they might be doing sprays. They might be doing rodent surveys. So they're not just entomologists, they're also looking at all the associated little critters that could negatively impact soldiers. Move up a little bit further, another couple of decades, we get into the Gulf War. And anybody in the audience here know what this trap is? The CDC light trap, it's kind of an earlier form of it. So military really adopted mosquito surveillance. CDC light traps. We started looking at speciation. So those units, instead of just going out and looking for larval habitat and doing some spray or such, they're really starting to hone in on what species is it? What can it transmit? What does that species habitat? Where does it breed? Really getting that science behind, which leads to what is a military entomologist? So we started getting degreed entomologists into the military, started recruiting to get people that were knowledgeable at a much more scientific understanding to help with this kind of thing. And so military entomologists, they might go out and spray. Generally, the entomologists would kind of stay behind, and they would they're more of the leaders, and then they will send out soldiers to go do the different missions. The other picture here, rodents. Rodents is always a big one with the preventive medicine. Mice are all over the place. Rats are all over the place. So they're oftentimes dealing with those bigger four-legged creatures, not just the little six and many-legged. Military entomologists also do things like testing equipment status. So this is a example of some entomologists down in Florida with the Navy doing testing on some of the fogging equipments. So looking at what products are out on the market. What products are out on the market? Are they actually doing what they're supposed to do? Are they the best products to be used? So they do a lot of testing and evaluation of equipment to make sure that what the military is using is the top of the line, the best for what it needs to be. Other entomologists get very specialized. These are some Navy or Air Force entomologists, and they fly giant planes and they spray big areas. This was really highlighted back, kind of dating myself the way back in Hurricane Katrina days. Very successful reduction of mosquito populations through these aerial applications. There's a lot of other entomologists out there, but that kind of gives a breadth of what entomologists within the military do. Now, it's not just haphazard, an entomologist here, entomologist there. We actually have a very structured organization to make sure that all the entomological pest management aspects with the military has structure. And back in the late 1950s, I believe it was 1956, at the time it was called the Armed Forces Pest Control Board, redesignated to be a little bit more inclusive to be the Armed Forces Pest Management Board. This is overarching organization that establishes policy on pest issues, on vector-borne disease issues, anything entomological. They do a lot of research. They look at products, as I said before, with the other organization, we kind of test stuff. This organization, we approve products for use for deployed units that go out and have like a special kit to do mosquito surveillance or tick surveillance. That's kind of what this organization does. But one of the biggest things that they do is develop, maintain, implement the Department of Defense Pesticide Applicator Certification Program. So EPA is the overarching organization that oversees all the state certification programs. EPA considers Department of Defense on par with the state. So we maintain our certification just as well as every state out there does. We involve very detailed training, evaluation. Anybody who's DoD certified has to retest every 3 years. So in some ways, this is a little bit more stringent than a lot of states. A lot of states you just get certified and you go to get CEUs and you maintain it. DoD, we want to make sure that you're showing your competency every few years, maintaining your ability. But the AFP&B established that. They standardize what the training modules are for the various services. Every service kind of teaches or certifies their own personnel. And the AFP&B kind of is overarching standardization program for that. There's a lot of entomological research also with the Department of Defense. We have things such as Walter Reed, his name again, Walter Reed Institute of Research. There's malaria vaccination research going on with that organization. We have USAMRIID. They do all kinds of looking at infectious diseases, a lot of high biosafety level. That's where like anthrax and all these really major diseases, that's where the research goes on. And there's a good bit of entomological research associated. I mentioned the Armed Forces Pest Management Board. I'm on one of the committees, so I'm not going to say we or they, but we maintain what we call the Deployed Warfighter Program. We give research money to organizations for something that like we might need, a new trap, that we have very specific needs for something. We give grant money to help develop those for our use that then can turn around and be used for industry. Some insect repellents have been through this system that are now out on the market for civilians use. And then the one on the far right at the bottom, Naval Entomological Center of Excellence. This is one of the organizations that does a lot of testing on those equipment. So a new sprayer comes out, they're going to test it and evaluate its use and how well that could be used for military purposes. All right, we're going to be a little bit more focused. We'll go to the Army. This is Army Public Health Command. It's actually an outdated name, but I left it here because that's kind of where I came from. This was originally a partnership with Johns Hopkins University's School of Public Health. Way back in the 1940s, this was established and it became the Army Industrial Hygiene Lab. Then it morphed into what we call CHIPM, USA CHIPM. That's when I came in about 16 years ago under the CHIPM name. CHIPM stood for Center for Health Promotion and Preventive Medicine. About 2 years after I came on board, we merged with the Veterinary Command to form the Public Health Command. And for a number of years, it was an overarching global command with regions underneath it. And I fell at one of the regions. And then for whatever reason, the Pentagon decided to disband that. And that global level became the public health center. And us regions, we fell out to the hospital system. So now we kind of fall more aligned with clinical side of things. And then a couple of years ago, if you've heard of the DHA, Defense Health Organization or Association, that is where that global level now sits. So it's been redesignated as Defense Centers for Public Health. So that's kind of like, that was kind of my higher command headquarters, but now that's changed. So where do I fit? Well, before I get to that, pest management within the military, we kind of have several different levels of functions. There is kind of your service level. So this is moving away from war. And this is more, it's in the continental United States, like the forts all around the country. We're less dealing with fighting. We're now dealing with families, with the soldiers, their families, retirees. It's more of like cities. And so within that, you have things like daycare workers. They have a responsibility within this. One, their main responsibility is the kids, but they also have sanitation employees who may come in like after hours to clean that up. And we want to make sure that they're doing that appropriately. They're cleaning, keeping spills out, and make sure we don't have cockroaches, things like that. You also have the facilities, so the building that they're in, you gotta make sure that those buildings stay in good condition. So things can't get in, we don't have mice invading. If it's a dining facility, there's a lot of cooking equipment. We need to make sure that equipment stays functioning in good repair. And of course, you have pest management. So this could be, it's less soldiers now. Soldiers generally don't do applications as much anymore. It's either civilians, but that's even kind of going away. It's more going towards contractors. So having some other company come on post and have to follow certain rules, and then they can do the pest management. We also have public health assets at every installation. This is kind of where I get involved, is teaching these people. So this is your health inspectors. So if you ever go to a restaurant and you see the nice little, it's got an A, this is the military equipment. And so they're going out, they're looking at the food, handling the food expiration time, temperature, they're looking for pest related issues, make sure all this is healthy. And then a regional level, that's where I fit in. So I work for the Public Health Command East. My region is responsible for all the states on the eastern half of the continental United States, as well as Puerto Rico, and then we have a little bit of responsibility at Naval Station Guantanamo Bay. So it's a naval station, but there's some components that are Army, and so we have a responsibility there. Now, what we do, we're based out of Fort Meade, Maryland, so it's kind of halfway between Baltimore and DC. And we will go out to all of these different forts within our region. And you can see these red areas, where red lines, those are where the major forts are. And those major forts will have a unit that's it's that preventive medicine unit, and we work hand in hand with them. There's other little dots on here. Those are the satellite locations. So I don't necessarily go to all of those little dots, but the big dots have responsibility for all the smaller dots. It's a lot of work to cover. Now, I work under the Entomological Sciences Division for Public Health Communities, and this is all of our responsibilities. A lot. So kind of a jack of all trades, master of none kind of situation. in terms of entomology. So we have three main categories of work that we do. We have training opportunities. Two different kind of categories under that. The entomological technical assistance visit. This is maybe our bread and butter mission, where we'll go to an installation. So Fort Bragg, North Carolina. I will fly down there about every 3 years and spend a week on site working with the installation preventive medicine unit, making sure they understand specific mosquito, tick, bed bugs, food-related pests, pesticide safety, and broad categories of anything that could be a health threat that's related to insects. And making sure that they are following standardized protocols on how to do surveillance, how to do things, but we tailor it specific to that. When you think of insects, mosquitoes in southern Florida are not the same as mosquitoes up in upstate New York. You've got a lot of different variation in diverse species, their behaviors, the diseases associated with them. So we really have to tailor that to each location we go to. We also have special technical trainings. So I'm involved with stored product tests. I do a lot of training on all those little bugs that get into food, and how to keep them out and what to do when we find them, and teaching all those units that are out in the weeks doing that work, what to look for when they see it, what should they do for the different species. That's kind of our basic training programs. We do a lot of consultation services stuff, as reach back subject matter experts. One of the first things we might do is a desktop consultation. Telephone, text message, email. Hey, I've got a question. We got this bug. What is it? We used to get a lot of things sent to us, but in the digital age, you get a lot of pictures. I'm sure as an entomologist here, what's this bug? And it's a little blurry thing. I don't know what it is. Send it to me. I can get it underneath a microscope and see it out. I can't tell from a little blur. But we do those kinds of things. So it could be very quick, simple consultations, or we can get into special things, special technical missions. I'll talk about a couple of those a little bit later. Might be a survey for a particular pest, particular disease, that we go and we do intensive surveillance to work with those installation assets, or a quick response mission. So these are fun for me. This is where I get to put on kind of the Sherlock Holmes hat and what's going on, what's wrong. It could be a bed bug issue that the installation's not getting under control and their contractors can't get it worked out. Oh, I get to go and get on site and figure out, okay, what's going on with it? Are we looking at the right bug? Are we doing the right thing? Is it people pointing fingers at each other, blaming, it's your fault, no, it's your fault. Okay, now kids, sit down at this table, we're gonna patch this out and get it under control. So that's kind of one of my favorite kinds of things. Next, we have our biosurveillance and pathogen detection program. This is a partnership with our unit's laboratory division. We work with the installations and teaching them how to do surveillance, how to survey for mosquitoes. You want to survey for mosquitoes for West Nile virus, you're going to be doing it differently than if you're surveying for malaria. The species of mosquitoes have different behaviors, worm traps work differently. So we work with them to gather those mosquitoes. They send them to us. We, the entomology, we do the identification. Okay, this is Aedes aegypti. Okay, Aedes aegypti mosquito. A number of diseases associated with that. We pass that on to our lab. The lab does PCR testing. Is the pathogen for those diseases in that mosquito? Now we have to risk We have the vector, we have the pathogen, we have a greater risk. Now, we might need to be going and doing more intensive work at that location. We do similar for ticks, so we have mosquitoes, we have ticks, those are kind of the two primary vectors that we deal with within our region. Of course, there's other things, there's fleas, potential sand flies, could be kissing bugs. Our sister region out west does a lot of kissing bug work. And same thing, our collaborators do the surveys, we teach them how to do it, and they send it to us. We get that pathogen risk back to them. All right, so that's gonna broad overview of what we do with Public Health Command. I'll talk about a couple of the unique opportunities that I've dealt with it. So there is the ROTC Cadet Summer Training Program. ROTC, the Reserve Officer Training Corps, that's what it is. University students that are likely to go into the military, they've got a partnership. They will go to Fort Knox, Kentucky every summer, and we get about 10,000 cadets, college-age kids coming in, and this is where they learn how to be a soldier. So we'll see some of these pictures they're doing, marching, staying in overnight in fields, they're doing all the gun stuff. A lot of entomological risks associated with this. So with that many cadets, you also have a ton of support people. So about 10,000 cadets, we got about 10 to 15,000 support people. Cadre that's teaching them how to do everything, all the food related stuff, all of that. So we got about 25,000 people that descend on Fort Knox every summer. You get a lot of pest related things, a lot of risks of ticks in particular. So what we do is we go out every year and we do surveys in these areas to look at what the tick risk is. We'll do long-term surveys. This one's a Baker through the years, same location. They use it every year. They change up their training program. Some years they have tent city. You got all the cadets staying in these tents outdoors. Other years there's no tents, there's no infrastructure, and they're hiking along the road and then they sleep in the woods. So every year is a little bit different. We, as entomologists, have to figure out what's going on, what those risks are, and try to reduce those risks. So things such as tick sweeps, tick drags, those, we'll do CO2 trapping. Tick is the biggest threat. We do mosquitoes. We've had bed bug issues in tents before. We've even had field fly issues. There was one year, I think it was the general of the ROTC program wanted these cadets to dig cat holes. You know what a cat hole is? It's dig a little tiny hole and that's where you go to the bathroom. That's fine and dandy if you're a small group of soldiers and you're traveling for some mission, dig a couple little holes and you move on. When you got 10,000 kids doing it over a summer in one area, it gets to be a big problem. A lot of flies, a lot of dysentery kinds of situations, all involved in that. So that's a mission that I've been dealing with for about 10 years. Almost every year I've gone to support it. Bed bugs. So who's dealt with bed bugs before? Anybody? A little bit. I deal with them quite regularly. In particular, most of the time when it gets to my level for support, it's usually office issues. We had one particular case that this might be the biggest bed bug issue. It's the biggest one I've ever seen. Facility, about 5,000 employees, and bed bugs got kind of established throughout the building. And it got to a point where the pest control ended up fumigating. So you imagine a building that can hold about 5,000 employees, an office complex. And they taped it up airtight and pumped in poisonous gas. A lot of things could go wrong there. No deaths or anything like that, but take a look at the picture here on the left. That's supposed to be insecticide dust. If you're familiar with that at all, it's supposed to be like you haven't dusted your shelf in a couple of months. Very thin layer, inappropriate application of pesticides. I got involved after the case and I had a number of issues, legal issues going on with this. But we deal with these on occasion of things that may not necessarily be disease pathogen, but bed bugs are a public health issue. Ants in daycare facilities, happens all the time. Little kids, sugary foods, crumbs go around. So we get a lot of issues dealing with that. Also, not just ants, but cockroaches in these kind of facilities, bed bugs in these kinds of facilities. When it goes beyond capabilities of the installation, that's where we can look into it. This one just happened about 6 months ago. So I was doing one of our technical assistance visits, and one of the things we do is take the soldiers in that unit to a dining facility. I teach them how to do inspections and how to walk through a facility, things to look for, all of that. And then we go to one and they do it and I observe them and I give them feedback. While we were doing that, we came across this product. This is for all intents and purposes, this is a bug bomb. And this was in a dining facility. Can you imagine what might occurred? Sprayed up, not fumigation, but fogging. You get a lot of small aerosolized liquids and they descend and land on everything, contamination. This particular product was in the picture on the left where the guy's kneeling down. It was underneath this automatic dishwashing machine. Well, about where the camera is where the cook line was. So pesticides going up, getting on food, that was a big issue. I'm investigating further and I come across other products. So you got lady beetle pesticides not labeled for use in a food facility. Another big issue. Investigating further and come to find out, these are being applied by dining facility employees. Go back to what we said, we have a DoD pesticide certification program. They all have to be certified and trained to use them. Can't be just a dining cook putting pesticides out. So this was a major infraction to the point where we had to hard stop, cease operations, get with the garrison commander, shut them down, total cleaning, major problem. It happens occasionally. So we gotta stay on top of looking for the stuff. Because they didn't know they couldn't spray anything. We had to educate them. Another one here, 2021. Y'all might recall the United States pulled out of Afghanistan. Well, when we pulled out of Afghanistan, we brought a bunch of people with us, a lot of refugees. These were families, maybe a translator and their kids, bringing them back. And we had multiple places in the United States, temporary housing until they could kind of get established somewhere. One of those happened to be in Virginia, and there was concern of malaria. So malaria is endemic in Afghanistan, and we had tons of people from Afghanistan coming to this area. Some of them came up hot on blood tests for malaria, and the surrounding community was concerned, rightfully so. You've got someone with malaria, you have the right conditions, right mosquito, potential local transmission. So we went out we partnered with the state public health agencies, state entomologists with, Virginia. And we conducted intensive surveillance for the Anopheles mosquito, ones that can transmit malaria. And did all kinds of surveys. Thankfully, we found very few Anopheles in that region. And the ones that we did, nothing came up positive. We got the people that had the malaria in the blood, we got them treated, and things have since moved on. But that was a big concern of the local community in particular that we went out and we did a lot of work for. You know, mosquitoes, ticks, things like that, they don't care that there's a fence line between military and civilian world. So a lot of the work that we do does cross those boundaries. And then last things, one thing that I love a lot, I'm sure as an entomologist, you've probably done outreach before, dealing with little kids, teaching them about bugs. We do that a lot, but I always focus it on public health related thing, showing them mosquitoes underneath the microscope. Oh, no mosquito, baby mosquitoes are living in water. Here's some here. Ticks. I used to do an Earth Day event every year down in Virginia, and they would always have a bunch of middle school kids to sing at one of the installations, and there was a hiking trail. And so I would always say, put me at the head of the hiking trail. And I would go out and I would do a survey for ticks. And that bottom picture, that was ticks I collected in like 5 minutes. So then you got these little kids about to go on a hike and hey, wait. Do you have bug spray on? No? I mean, take a look at I caught those in 5 minutes right there. You want some bug spray? Well, let's talk about what to do. So it's education. Yeah, I could have hissing cockroaches and holding them, and sometimes I do and fun, but I always try to make it an education for that health. Because in the end game is this is what I do, is I protect these people. So it's not just the warfighter, which this is a dual military family, but I'm protecting them, their kids, people like me, civilian entomologists or civilian Army civilians, contractors, retirees, people outside the gate that could be impacted by it. That's what I think. So ends the talk on entomology and the history of war related stuff up to kind of where we are today. Any questions?
There are any questions in the chat? Yeah.
Somebody work for, oh, it's Mike Terrell. I know, Mike, I know you. Great to see you here. Yeah, no, okay. There's some interesting.
We have a question.
1 second. Okay, any questions here? Yes.
What is the future of AI?
AI, so right now, I'd say the biggest issue with AI for impacting us in entomology is there's a few companies out there that are using AI for identification. So we've kind of worked with one particular company that's using AI cameras to identify mosquitoes. So we put them on these little wells, put them underneath the camera, and it says what species it is. And it's not really there yet. There's some of the tests we've done, it wasn't very accurate. Some of it's better. It's moving in that direction. I'm a little fearful of that as a classic entomologist. I want to be able to have a key and go through and ID it. And when there's something that AI that I don't know how it's trying to identify that, if it's actually doing it and you don't have a human to verify, that could be a big problem. What we get this place.
About a week ago, the press was reporting a case of locally born chikungunya.
Yep.
I think Long Island.
Yep.
Could you just comment on that and what you might be doing about that?
Right now, I can't do anything.
I guess repeat it so people can hear.
Yeah, so the question here was, there was a local transmission case of chikungunya on Long Island. And he was asking, how is that related to what I did? Right now, I can't do anything because I, as federal employee on furlough, I don't actually working, so right now I'm kind of off the books on that. But I currently have a couple of soldiers that are still working and talk with them a little bit about it. It's kind of a gray area, it's almost like any kind of work, but they've been interacting with the military in those regions that does our surveillance for us. West Point has a big unit that does surveys, and they survey some areas around military posts around that area. So they're working that. I'm not privy to hearing what's going on with it. But what we would typically do is bump up our mosquito surveillance there from a baseline survey, might be once a week, 5 light traps, or those are chikungunya, that would be Aedes mosquitoes. We would be using like the BG Sentinel trap, specialized for Aedes. We might go there and enhance surveys, bring more traps, do like nightly trapping, if it seems warranted. So, but the first thing we do is work with those local public health assets. We had it was a potential malaria case in New Jersey, about 3 or 4 months ago. So I worked with him on that. So it didn't go anywhere. The local case tended to be possibly not local. But with any of that, we have to kind of dive into it and figure out, because it's hard medical wise when there's a case of something that's like local transmission. HIPAA laws prohibit us from finding out who they are, where they live. So it could be county level. Counties can sometimes be really wide, so there's a lot of nuances.
How do you balance the benefit of rainforest, say, the fields in the area, with the damage that might be beneficial, that might be a food source for birds?
So we, first off, with military, really with all federal, it's supposed to be IPM, integrated pest management, is supposed to be adhered to strictly. Meaning you can't just go spray to spray. You can't be we're going to spray for mosquitoes once a week. There has to be a surveillance component to justify putting the chemicals out there. So that itself helps reduce the impact of any pesticide on the environment. We don't generally get down to the level of looking at the beneficials. We know that it does impact them, and we have to balance. Is it risky enough to do an application or not? And that comes down to those installation assets making that determination between the risk that the pathogen risk that we can give them if they're doing the surveys, and then what their pest control operations might be what capabilities that they may not have fogging equipment, they may have to go contract out to get someone. So it's a lot of different players making that decision, but it's always the least risky to the environment as well as people that we try to do.
Last question. Some of my neighbors are having the yards sprayed with mosquitoes. What's your view on it?
So yes, some of his neighbors are applying or having their yard sprayed for mosquito control. What are my thoughts on that? Mosquitoes fly. Pesticides are very focal. So, an application of, say, a liquid for a residual for mosquitoes is gonna last a few days at most. Works well if you're gonna have a big party this weekend, you know, a lot of people outside. Okay, doing some sort of spray might suppress those adult populations. But really the bigger method of control is larval control. Trying to reduce habitat for breeding and then knowing what mosquito you have. There are some mosquitoes that only fly a couple hundred yards. There's others that can fly several miles. Some will really fall. So if it's just a pest control company that's just coming out and spraying, they're not doing the classical, what's the first thing you need to do? You need to know what the pest is. You need to identify it. Then that tells you what the risk is. Is it, Aedes albopictus? Okay, it's not traveling very far away from here. It's breeding somewhere within a couple of hundred yards at most. You can focalize it. But as far as like a once a month spray, you're getting a couple of days a month of a suppression of adults, but more are gonna fly in. Yes. Yes, so she has, am I worried about New World screwworm? And yes, no, for the military standpoint, we're not in the business of animals, livestock and all that. But it's moving back up and it's gonna be hitting the United States pretty soon, importing animals and things, so.
Any more questions? Okay, thank you very much.
How does DoD approach conservation authorities on basis versus pest management priorities? Fort Dix, yeah, I'm quite familiar with Fort Dix. We have a pretty strong component of like natural resources and endangered species. And the EPA has recently pushed out a lot of requirements for pest control companies and things to look at what endangered species are in areas. So there's a lot of good information to know what's in that area. And then the responsible stakeholders on those installations are looking at that and making sure that they're doing the best they can to not apply in certain areas. It's kind of a hard generalization to say, but are these populations taken in consideration in IPM plans? Definitely. There is an entire section on endangered species, not just endangered, but what's the next level above them, the threatened species. We look at invasive species. There's a whole natural resources group at each installation that's looking at all that.
Actually, I have one more question. Okay. What do you think, should the public be concerned about education and about entomology? Should people know about stuff?
So should the public be concerned with the education of entomology? Yes. I think entomology, we've had this conversation earlier, entomology is kind of falling to the wayside as far as education goes. And AI, that's the other question we had, we're getting into things like ChatGPT. I get asked a question on a particular bug and it's getting more and more, they're just going to online sources to look for. And I think that's filtering down to universities. It's getting less people interested in insects to go to formal college to learn. It's unfortunate, but I think that's not unique to the continent.
Thank you.
Well, I can put in one more plug for organizations like the American Entomological Society. We promote understanding of insects and connection to insects and understanding the value, both its positive and negative things in our lives. And you can support such organizations such as us by becoming members or talk to your local school boards about, what do you do about insects in school? You know, are you focused on the testing standards the government needs, or are you concerned about what's really important for the kids? I don't want to get off my soapbox. Thank you very much for coming. Our next meeting is December 3rd. Ashley, do you have something to add?
Plug for that. Our next guest speaker is Destiny Mann, who is a doctoral student at the University of Delaware, studying agricultural entomology, and she's previously won some awards for past presentations, so I think we'll be in for another treat. So, and I'll just echo thanks to James. That was fantastic.
Right now. Is this the one? If you'd like to ask our speaker any questions, I'm sure, well, I don't want to speak for him, but. He also drove up all the way from Maryland to present this. Thank you.